Well, I mean, I saw a really alarming newspaper article just a week or so ago, in which it was some survey had shown that more than 50% of self-identifying Republicans believed that universities were bad for America. You know, that universities were actually a negative, harmful force in American life. That was, I mean, I'd never seen any group of people saying that before. You know, so that was shocking, and I do think this is not unique to England, not unique to America, because also in England there is a similar kind of distrust of expertise. You know, and you know, in the Brexit vote there, one of the things that came up over and over again was a dislike of experts telling you what to think. You know, and so somehow this mistrust of people who know things has become, I mean, internationalized. It's not just something about the American right. You know, and it obviously it's to somebody who has seen knowledge as being a great virtue, and you know, and who has spent his life trying to accumulate little bits of it, and somebody who thinks of knowledge as a kind of beauty, you know, it's very discomforting, to say the least, to have people who think of it as being suspicious, you know, because what's happening, it seems to me, is a strange distortion of the idea of the elite. You know, that's to me. If you ask me what's an elite, I would think more about the many billionaires sitting in the Trump administration. You know, that here's a government with more super rich people in it than has ever been in any American government. You know, and that government calls college professors and journalists elites. You know, we're not the ones with private planes and golf courses in the Bahamas. You know, relatively few novelists, you know, have these things. And the idea that we're the elite, whereas that group of, you know, that kind of 0.1 of the 1%, that considers itself to be in some way possessing the common touch, that just seems like an absurd comic inversion of reality, you know. And I mean, I think one of the things we see at the moment, and I tried to, in a way, capture in the novel, is this idea of a world turned upside down, you know, in which things that one thought of as being normal, solid, believable descriptions of reality, you know, are being stood on their head every day. And the idea of reality itself, the idea of truth as something verifiable and objective, all these things are being inverted and you know, knocked off their pedestals. Well, I mean, you know, there is a terrible thing which writers sometimes say to each other, which is that the worse it is, the better it is. You know, because I mean, like, when the world is in a terrible condition, there's a lot to write about. You know, and I mean, one demonstration of this is that, you know, the literature, very often underground literature, the samizdat literature of the Soviet Union, was of an extraordinary quality. You know, when there was this colossal adversary of Soviet authoritarianism, many writers, both in fiction and non-fiction, rose to that challenge and created extraordinary work. You know, and I think it's not unfair to say that the literature of the post-Soviet Union, the literature of Russia since 1989, that there is a sort of somewhat of a falling off. You know, that it's not quite as intense and extraordinary as that earlier work. You know, because of the lack of the adversary. You know, it's, in a way, you know, to put it in another way, it seems to me that spy fiction was enormously damaged by the loss of the Soviet Union, because suddenly, who were the enemy? You know, and so I do think that in times like this, which are very adversarial, and in which the question of the truth has become so central, you know, there's a big place for art You know, there's a really big role for art to speak up in such a time. And I think more or less every writer I know in America is considering how best to respond to the place we find ourselves, including me. And I mean, this is, you know, most of this book was written before November the 8th. I mean, the vast bulk of it was finished before the election. And I mean, I'm sorry to say that I guessed right, you know, and that's to say that I always knew that if things had gone another way, that there would have had to be some reshaping of a part of the book. And I mean, actually, anyway, I needed to do a bit of reshaping because things don't always turn out exactly as you foresee. But I wanted to try and capture this strange moment, you know. And I mean, to tell the truth, that part of the novel is very much background rather than foreground, you know. So the actual storyline of the book, what happens to the characters and how they resolve their particular dilemmas, that would not have been altered in any way if the election had gone another way. I mean, the story is the story, but the context of the story, the way in which America developed from the beginning of the Obama administration to the present moment, you know, what happened in that arc of time. That's the context against which the story takes place, and there I had to guess and gamble a little bit, and then try and fix things right up to the moment the book went to the presses. So that's more or less, you know, there's a moment when they take your fingers off the keyboard because they say, we're printing the book today, so you can't do any more. But until that moment, I was trying to fix things.